Okay, so Walter asked if I'd go into more detail about transitioning into being a full-time painter. So the first part of his question is, did I have shows lined up or was I primarily selling online at first? And I had been selling online since, say, 2007, and I went full-time painting in 2013. So I had been selling online for about 6 years. And it started off in 2007 with a blog. So I'd write a blog, like I'd post a picture, and then I'd write up about the experience of painting it, kind of like what I do in the videos, except it was in written form. And then I would have a link below the painting where people could click on it, and then they could go to they could bid on the painting on eBay. Now this was something that there was a painter that did this. Dwayne Kaiser, I think his name was, and he'd started this. It was like a painting a day kind of thing, and it caught on, and then Carol Marine picked up on that, and it became this sort of thing. There was a whole bunch of these daily painters that were posting and selling small work online in the form of from a blog. It was a way for people to get to know the painters, and you could share a little bit about your life and the experience. And videos, I don't even remember what YouTube was like back then. I know I was posting videos on YouTube, but the idea of sharing what was going on with painting and stuff like that wasn't really in my head yet. I had posted some music videos on there. If you want to go look for them, look up Juice Breaks, and you can see what I looked like 10 years ago. But anyway, so so I'd already been posting these pictures on a blog and selling them, these paintings, and they were 6x6s. And I'd committed to doing one a day for something like 6 months. And I did that, and it was like a period of real growth as far as artistically. In fact, that's where I think my work went from being amateurish to being more professional and something that you could see in a gallery, or more, I shouldn't say professional, but more finished. And I felt like I found my voice in that process, because there was a lot of time where I'd go out and I wasn't even sure what I wanted to paint as a painter. And so that period of time there, where I was painting every day, I knew I was committed. I was like, I have to do something here. I have to paint something. So I painted anything that caught my eye. And in that process, I made some discoveries. Like there were certain topics or subject matter that I felt like, oh, I could explore this more. One of those was like city scenes. And so I highly recommend that, if you commit to a small painting a day, if you can swing it, because you will grow. In fact, I'm thinking of doing that now with larger paintings, like just commit to doing a 16 by 20 every day. Just go out and do that for every day for a month. Anyhow, I'm getting off the topic here. So the point is, in 2007, I was blogging, and so I already had some experience. And I continued, I had a website, made a website too, figured that out. And so at least I had an online gallery. If I met people while I was plein air painting, I could say, oh yeah, check out chamberlainpaintings.com. And so I had that online gallery. And I was just starting to show. I started showing in 2007 with Studio Gallery in San Francisco, although nothing sold for the first couple of years. I just liked them. They liked me. They liked my work. And so I had work there, but nothing. And I participated in some shows periodically, some of their group shows, but I wasn't really, it wasn't my main focus. So that was 2007, and that was when I first started really regularly selling work. And the small paintings that I posted on my blog, I think one year I sold 85, which I thought was pretty good. And they sold for $100 a piece. So that year I remember thinking, wow, that's the first time I made some decent money, and it gave me confidence, it gave me confidence that, wow, there are people that actually like my work and want to buy it. And, occasionally they'd sell for more than $100 because they were on eBay, and you could bid, and some of them would get bid up to like 180, whatever. They were unframed, just 6x6 panels, so they're easy to put into like a priority mail envelope, and you could ship them anywhere. So anyway, that was a good experience. And then so now I'll fast forward to when I transitioned into full-time. So at that time, I believe I was showing at Studio Gallery, and I was participating in their group shows, and the group shows were doing pretty well. So in particular, one, they have a show at the end of the year, which is called Tiny, which is again 6x6 paintings. And I had a ton of experience with these little paintings. And so one year I think I sold 9, and then the next year she sold like 18, and then the next year it was like 37 or something like that. It was crazy. And so she was like, do you want to do Jen at the gallery asked me, do you want to do a solo show? And so I said, yes, absolutely, let's do it. Now by this time I felt like I had done some small shows like in churches and others. So I'd had a few solo shows, and I had open studios and everything. So I'd sold quite a bit of work, before taking on this solo show. So I felt like more than ready for it. Turns out it was a lot harder work than I thought. It was still a huge job, even with the little experience I had. Still is a huge job. I'm still learning, and I've done like 6 big solo shows in the last, I don't know, since then, like 4 years or something. So, because when I quit my job, the solo show was still a ways out. So when I quit the job, so the other part of the question, so when I first started, I was doing some online sales, but I wasn't doing the blogging anymore. I just had a website, and I was getting to be somewhat known, and people would go to the website, and I'd occasionally sell a piece that way. But to be honest with you, I kind of went into this situation without really planning. It just seemed like, okay, I have this solo show possibility. I had this other small show called 50/50, which was in Pacifica. And it wasn't more like I didn't do the math on it. I didn't sit down and think, oh, okay, this is what I need to do. I probably should have. But it was more just I had opportunities like this 50/50 show and the solo show at Studio Gallery and a few other little group shows at Studio Gallery. And I committed to participate in anything that I possibly could, even things that were small, whatever, anything that anyone asked, I would consider. And so it got to the point where I had enough opportunities that I had to produce a lot of work for these opportunities that were presenting themselves. And of course, there's no guarantee that any of them would have sold, but I had a little bit of money saved up, and I thought, okay, well, I'll just go for it. It's like, I got to give it a try and see. And I almost in some ways kind of didn't even want to look at the financial, like feeling like, oh, maybe it wouldn't even add up to do this. But like, I just didn't care. It was like, almost like, this is what I want to be doing. And I don't even want to know if it's going to work financially. Now it gets complicated because, all right, so he asked about if there's a period I struggled with artistically. Let's see, I've written it down over here. Artistically, emotionally, and financially. Here's the thing, and I'll go into this in another video, but the timing was horrible. I had always been really healthy up to that point. I rarely went to doctors or anything like that. So I transitioned over, I quit my job, and I remember I was up in the city and I was going out and taking pictures and stuff. And it was pretty clear that I was losing a lot of weight. And so I'm just over 6 foot, like 6'1", and I'm about 165 pounds to 170 pounds. And I went to a doctor's appointment that June, like right when I quit my job, and I felt fine, but I was 155 pounds, which I hadn't been in a long time. And I just thought, oh, I'm just busy, whatever. And this led into a whole thing I'm not going to get into here, just trying to figure out for months what was going on as I was getting sicker and sicker. And it turned out I was eventually, God, it was like 5 or 6 months later when I was hospitalized and diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And but in that whole period there, when I quit my job and I had some money saved up, that whole period right there, I was getting sick, really sick, as I was transitioning. So I was working, but there was this anxiety, like, because I quit in June. By October 1st, I started having night sweats every night. Then I started having joint swelling, like my ankles would get really swollen, and there's so many. It's Crohn's is an autoimmune disease where your own immune system sort of attacks your body, so it just like, it started with things like, night sweats and kind of feeling achy and feet and, so there's other gastrointestinal things as well, but it just was, it was really bad. I remember it feeling like, here it is, I'm going for it finally after all these years of like being a creative person and never really, and always making sacrifices, having jobs, no career, having jobs that supported a creative thing. I finally am at the point where I have these opportunities and I feel like I don't know what's going on. And nobody, the doctors didn't know either and thought it could have been cancer, or it was clear that it wasn't good, whatever it was. And so that was frustrating and upsetting, definitely to be dealing with all that at the same time. So, but as far as how things panned out financially, I probably had about $20,000 saved up. That was my savings, my life savings. And, and I'm single dad, so I had my daughter half the time. She would be here 5 days and then 5 days with her mom. So I had that responsibility as well. And and she would have been, she would have been about 5 or 6 years old at that point, not when I transitioned to full-time. When I transitioned to full-time, she was 12. And so, there was that financial, responsibility. And so there was a lot going on, and being sick was not helping things at all. And like I said, the timing was just so bad. I'm sure there might have been a link, maybe some of the stress. I think Crohn's is sort of, they say it can be triggered, although I had symptoms going back years, but they were very mild. So, but now in retrospect, I could tell, like one thing I used to get, like canker sores really bad, maybe like, not just like a few, but just like, I'd have episodes where I'd have 5 or 6 really painful ones, and that might last for a month or two. That can be caused by Crohn's. So anyway, so I started working on these shows and everything, and the money in my account was going down. I was selling things, and then I started having doctor bills and stuff like that too. And and I don't want this to sound like some like pity me kind of situation, but it was because I didn't view it that way. I was stressed out, but I was definitely still motivated and wanting to do this. And I thought, I gotta go for it, So, I stopped, that was June when I quit my job, and I participated in the show in August, and I looked at the pictures not that long ago of August of me hanging that show at Sanchez, which was like the little pieces, you'd hung 50 of them on a wall, and then there was a whole bunch of people all the way down this hallway that each had their little section of wall, and you'd grid out your paintings. It's a cool show. They still do it every year. So there's pictures of me hanging that, and I'm just like so thin. So at this point, I'm probably 150 pounds. And by the end, so I kept on, so that was the first show. It sold a little bit. I think I made $1,000 on that show. I started working with another little gallery, kind of gift shop gallery in Berkeley, and they had this situation where they had a gallery at the airport, and they're like, I did a little group show with them in Berkeley, and it maybe sold a piece or two. They were little cityscapes of San Francisco, and they asked me, hey, would you want to show in our airport gallery? We have a little gallery in the United Terminal, or the new United Terminal. I was like, what? That's unusual, but okay, sure, why not? I was like, yeah. So they took the pieces there. That turned out to be a really good thing, because I committed to this solo show at Studio, but then they lost their lease and they closed down. Here I am sick. There's the solo show date it's just undetermined, because they're not sure, what they're going to do about finding a new place. Their rent had gone up, as in San Francisco it does. And so they weren't sure where they were going to land at this point. And so I was like, okay, solo show's on hold until they find a new place. I'm getting progressively sicker, and like I said, ultimately ended up in the hospital the following March. And so the only real gallery thing I had going on, because Studio closed for like 6 months, so I had no gallery thing now. I was sick, And only thing I had was this gallery at the airport. Now I live close to the airport, close to SFO, like 10 minutes away, and which is way better than delivering to Berkeley. So anyway, so this gallery over there was Collector Gallery, and I loved them. We had a great relationship, and I would drive over with a box of little paintings to the, like, say, you know, where passengers get out, like arrivals or departures. I think it was departures. I can't remember. And I'd drive over there and just roll down the window, and she'd wait for me up there, and I'd hand her the box of paintings, and she'd go, you know, she'd go back in the building. I didn't even see that gallery because you can't get in because you have to go through TSA. You actually have to be traveling to go to that gallery. And so I didn't see that gallery for a long time. Like, I think I was traveling to Maine like a couple of years later, and I went in and I saw it, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. You know, it was very little, but it was right out there at the end where you know, where people board planes and stuff. So if you get a delay or whatever, it's like, you know, I can't tell you how many people I, you know, sold larger pieces to because they bought a little piece while they were traveling. And so it was really turned out to be a great thing. But at this point, you know, here I am sick, and that kind of, when I ended up in the hospital, and then when I came out of the hospital, I was like, I couldn't do anything. I went and stayed with my dad and his wife, and I couldn't even function. I was in bed all day for like probably 2 weeks. At that point, I dropped all the way down to 136 pounds. And I was like, but they had figured out what it was, and I'd started some pretty heavy medication. And so the hope was that I would start improving and everything. But so there was a month there where I just stopped painting completely. That was like 6 months after I made the transition. My money was gone because I wasn't, you know, pretty much, you know, I wasn't, you know, earning anything, and then there was all these medical bills. So yeah, I mean, it was pretty much as bad as you could, like, it was pretty much a bad situation. But I did start gradually getting better as I got out of the hospital, and I started having this, you know, I started these monthly, or every 8 weeks I'd have these infusions, which I actually just had one yesterday. And, you know, where they hook you up to an IV and they put this drug in you, and then, you know, you know, it's an immunosuppressant, so it calms your immune system down, so it's not like, you know, destroying you. Anyway, so here I am now. It's like approaching, I think I started selling through, you know, I was consistently selling through Collector at the airport, but it was very small. Studio Gallery opened up, beautiful new place. I was really excited. I think I was their first solo show in the new place, and the show sold really well. But again, I was just teetering on, like, you know, my bank account was like on zero. It was just kind of teetering back and forth, you know, like I didn't have to borrow money, but I do remember it was my birthday. Let's see, it would have been almost 3 years ago. So maybe 2 years into painting full time, and I had nothing. I had zero. I had hit zero, and I had a show coming up in a couple months, and I was like, I just got to make it to that show. You know, I've got to get. And I know this may sound irresponsible. And maybe it was bad timing with the sickness and everything. I felt like I had planned and I had set aside money, and of course you plan, and then it's just. So I had set aside this money, that was gone, and now I'm feeling healthy, I'm feeling strong, I've got these opportunities, and I know that I'm hoping that I'd already had a couple shows, or maybe one solo show that did well, and I was going to do my second one in October, and it was now July, and I was out of money. And and I've been selling well, but you know, when you add up how much it takes to just exist, especially in the Bay Area, and I don't do anything like extra at all, like barely buy clothes. I had to buy a new car because I had one. That was bad timing too. But you know, so I was selling and kind of floating around zero, you know, like back and forth, teetering above like broke. But I was selling a lot of work. But you have to make enough money. I mean, you've got to, especially at my prices, like I like to keep my stuff affordable. And I do sell a lot of work, but you have to sell huge amounts of work to make, let's say, even $30,000 a year. Do the math on that. If that's going to a gallery, then plus the government takes 16% right off the top for self-employment tax and like Social Security and all that. So any painting you sell, first, let's say you sell a painting for $1,000 at a gallery. So the gallery gets their cut, you get $500 of that. You know, it's 50-50. So you get $500. Now the government takes, right off the bat, before you pay income tax, there's this self-employment thing where you pay 16% off, 16% off of that, and then you pay your income tax on top of that. It's like, oh my God. So I didn't do any of this. I didn't figure out any of this beforehand. It's probably a good thing I didn't, you know, going in blind or whatever. So anyway, here it is, like 3 years ago, just about 3 years ago, and it's my birthday. I have nothing. I'm broke. You know, I could mortgage my house and everything, but I didn't want to get into that. I didn't want to borrow money. I was not going to do that. I've never done that, and I wanted to be, it's like, okay, if I have to do that, then I'm going to get a job. I'll have to do something. And so I was considering that. I thought, all right, you know, maybe I'll try this again at another time, but I got to save up some money. So, and then my dad and his wife, you know, gave me an unexpected birthday gift of some money, which was just about enough to that, and I'd had some more sales that came up, like a few commissions that I'd gotten online or whatever, just through my website. You know, so that got me to the show, but the show happened in October and I had zero again. And Jen with the gallery was great because the show sold really well, and she started writing me checks immediately. So that was 3 years ago. And since then, I mean, I'll be totally honest with you, I still bounce around zero, but I sell a lot of work and I'm supporting myself and I'm getting out there and I'm getting better at painting. But that's why I started a Patreon account, link in the bio or link in description, you know, go check it out. And I'm honest about, I can say this, I'm one of the top selling artists at Studio Gallery, and I don't say that, I'm not saying that in some sort of bragging way or anything like that. I'm saying it just to give you some context here and some real, you know, the reality on the scene. You know, if you do a solo show and you sell, let's say you do a solo show and you sell $30,000 worth of paintings and you take home $15,000 for that, you know, how long will that last you? And how many of those shows do you have to do a year to make, say, $50,000 a year or $45,000 or whatever it is your goal is? It's just, you've got to sell a lot of work and large work too. So it's a challenge. So yeah, I think there's some, am I a successful painter? I feel like I am, you know, because I've been, you know, 5 years doing this without, you know, for a job. That's what I've done. And I've paid all my bills and everything. It's just I'm not comfortable around this zero mark, you know, like I don't dip below it, but I get down, you know, where I only have a couple $1,000 and then I have a show and then it goes up again. But it's not, so the one thing I would say is those are some of the challenges. And does that challenge you emotionally? Yeah, it does. I mean, it can, or not emotionally, but it can be scary. I could teach too, which I thought of doing, and I'm going to get into that in another video. That's why I started making these videos, and I am giving away this, you know, this information or whatever that I could be. I want to share it, and I feel like it's really important, regardless of what you do in your life, to give back in some kind of way, or share what you've learned. And I realize there's a lot of people that are artists in the situation I'm in, and they don't necessarily have like $500 to go do a workshop, or they're somewhere where they can't travel to, you know, to have a workshop. So that's part of the reason with the videos. And then I thought, you know, hopefully I can maybe make some income, even if it was like $1,000 a month or something, through Patreon and Patreon, and then maybe I'll put ads on. I don't want to put ads on my videos, but I might do that on just the beginning, not mid-roll ads, which are like, you know, going to interrupt the flow of it. I don't want to do that, but maybe if I put ads just in the beginning, that could help out financially. So that's part of why I started doing videos, but not really. The primary reason for videos, and I'll get into this in another video because that's another question. The main reason I did it was just to share what I've learned, and I know how much, especially when I was sick. I watched a lot of videos and it gave me inspiration and gave me joy and hope, and it helped. I think it helped heal in a way, you know, to have that excitement. There was a guy, Tim Bell, who's back east, and you'd have to just look up Tim Bell video or something, and he's kind of giving a talk out on this deck in Provincetown, and I've kind of DM'd back and forth with Tim. He's a cool guy, and I really liked I love his work, but I also, more importantly, when I saw this video, I don't even think I knew his work at that point. I just found this video of him talking and kind of sharing the experience of being a painter, and it really was inspiring. And I watched that. I told him, I was like, dude, man, I watched that video like 20 times. I loved it. Like, it was really inspiring. I said, you should make more, man. You should have a YouTube channel. I would watch those videos, you know, and he was like, oh man, he goes, I listen to it. I can't stand the sound of my own voice, you know? And there is something to that. You got to get over it. Like, the one thing is, like, I started filming, I had done some videos like maybe 5 years ago, and I started again this last, well, actually about a year ago. And it was like, wow, okay, I've aged, you know? It's like, so yeah, there is that. You're looking at yourself, and you know, you're filming, and you're like, oh God, you know, I don't look so good in this or that or whatever, or you sound. I don't even think about that stuff anymore. It's more about just communicating, whatever. So it's like, so anyway, but I understand his point. But anyhow, so when I was watching those, I thought, oh, this would be cool. I'll do that, and the videos could help maybe share, get more people to know what I'm doing, and could possibly bring people to, you know, my website or to some of my shows or whatever, and could possibly help with sales. But like I say, primarily it was more just about sharing what I've learned, and that's kind of what I like doing, is just communicating to you guys and sharing any tips that I have that could help you on that journey, because I've gotten a lot from watching videos myself. So anyway, let me look up here quickly. Oh, social media. So yeah, I'll just briefly touch on this, and because I know this video is getting long, but I'll talk about this more in a future video as well. Social media, by this time, I think, when I started, when I quit, I was not on Instagram. When I quit my job and went full-time, I was not on Instagram. I just had a website. That was really it. I wasn't blogging anymore, so I wasn't really on social media at all. Now, as time went forward, I got into another gallery up after I had a few successful shows at studio galleries, solo shows. Then I was offered like to participate in some group shows up at Elliott Fouts Gallery in Sacramento, which is where my solo show is right now. And I'll plug this, come out on Saturday the 12th, and come say hello. We can meet in person, 6 to 9 p.m. Saturday, May 12th at Elliott Fouts Gallery on P Street in Sacramento. So if you're in the area, come by and say hello. But anyway, so I started showing there, and Michelle, who's the gallery director, she's like, hey Mike, you should really look into Instagram. You should have an account. And I had, my daughter at that time was probably 13, and I just handed her my phone and said, set me up on an Instagram account. She already had one, so she did. Anyway, so I will get into my thoughts on Instagram in another video, but I did start, you know, with Instagram and everything, but that was much later. And the sales from that, there have been some sales, but it's not anything you can depend on. It's just kind of a little extra thing. So even when you have tons of followers, so don't, I'll just say this in brief. The thing I feel about Instagram is it's what it's great for. It's an online gallery that everybody can view immediately. That's what it's good for. Sales on there, you may sell once in a while, but I have 50,000, I just hit 50,000 followers on there. And somebody asked me, oh, did you buy stuff or whatever? And okay, that's fine to ask that and everything, but that is not, I would never do that. Mine is 100% organic. 100%, and it took a long time to get to 50,000. Just regular posting, lots of periods of posting new work almost every day and everything. If you do post a lot of work, you will get inquiries about, oh, is this available or whatever. So the more you post, the more you will get people asking if something's available. The more you post good, and just post, I only posted my best work. But still, it's not, it's just an extra thing, you know? Anyway, I have a feeling this was kind of all over the place, but to recap, yeah, so quitting, you know, when I quit my job, I didn't have any real specific plan. I had some, you know, I had a few shows that was going to participate in. I was doing a little bit online, not much. It was bad financial plan, and I paid the price to a certain extent. Yeah, so this is getting kind of long-winded, so I'll wrap it up here. And I'm sorry, I know I've digressed and I've been all over the place, so I'll just kind of recap and try to bring it home here. So when I started, I was doing mostly, I had a few shows out there, nothing really, no guarantees, nothing solid, and my online presence at that time was pretty much just a website. That was all I had. Now, I would be painting outside occasionally. That could lead to sales, but that was kind of sporadic. I had a few gallery situations, like I said, the gallery at the airport, and I had studio gallery, which quickly closed, so I was really just one gallery. It wasn't a good financial plan, but I figured even if I had to if I had to go back to work, even if I had a year off, that I would grow so much as an artist when I was just working full time at it, that I thought, well, if I get to a year, what opportunities are going to be happening a year from now? Even if there's not a lot of promise right now or a lot of guarantees, and there never will be guarantees. So that was my situation as far as, my online presence and gallery situation when I quit. And then as far as struggles, like I said, the one thing I didn't talk about that Walter asked about was, did I struggle artistically? And I think the biggest, the emotional and financial, I think I covered. Well, not so much the emotional. Emotional I did, I think, because it was very frustrating being sick and feeling, there was a lot of emotions with that, and wondering if I was doing the right thing. And, many times in those, especially first couple of years, I thought about like, oh, should I? And it still happens. Like sometimes I think, especially when I'm approaching zero in my bank account, where it's like, maybe there's another way. Should I get a job or whatever? But I would just start teaching, I would do that, like have like plein air workshops or whatever. But yeah, artistically. So did I struggle artistically in that period? And yeah, the one artistic struggle you'll have is the temptation to kind of paint things that sell. And my attitude with that is when I do a solo show, it's usually between 40 and 50 pieces, which is above and beyond what a gallery would expect for a solo show. I mean, you could bring them 30 pieces and they'd be fine with it. So if I bring in 50 pieces and 30 of them are kind of in an area where like both myself and the gallery are like, this is stuff that we know is popular and this will work, then I figure that other 20 pieces that I do, that I can do anything with. I can experiment and I can do whatever I want, try new things. And the galleries I've worked with don't even, I just bring them the work. They don't see it beforehand. It's like I just bring it in and here's the show, And I feel very fortunate, but and with that, so they hang it all, and which is really great. So, but the artistic struggle is that you can get into a rut, and I've seen this with a lot of painters where they'll just find something, excuse me, something that works, and then they just, and I understand this, I'm not going to criticize it because I understand financially why they would do this. It happens a lot with abstract decorative work where they'll find one sort of thing and then they'll just explore this very narrow sort of approach. So the differences between all the paintings are very small. It's essentially just like, it's like riffing on one idea, year after year after year because it's a popular idea. It'd be like Jackson Pollock, it's just like he could, and I think that's artistically difficult to do, is to just, you find something that's popular, and you just keep doing it over and over again with these minor these minor variations. That for me is not why I got into painting. I got into painting to explore different things and to, challenge myself and whatever. So yeah, so that doesn't work for me. But financially, that seems to be a good business model. People who really have a narrow focus and kind of do one thing with very slight variations, I've noticed, it surprises me that this stuff sells and sells. I guess the risk you run there is that eventually it's probably going to become passé and won't sell, just because like something could be very in vogue at one moment, like, wow, these are cool, and they're selling like crazy, but there's not a lot of artistic progression in what's going on. So I think in some ways, long term, you may like sell a lot or whatever, but long term, it's probably not a great business plan. But what do I know? I don't know a lot about like decorative, abstract-y kind of stuff, but I've seen a lot of that. And also with abstract, they can paint big. So that's another thing. It's harder to paint large paintings when you're painting realism or it's just the drawing is harder, and I don't know. So there are definitely some challenges with that. But yeah, the only real one was like that temptation to maybe paint things that I knew would sell. But like I said, having extra work in my show that is purely experimental or whatever, and it's not like off the charts weird or anything, it's just like different subject matter. You know, like seascapes was something that was new. I had no interest in seascapes at all when I was first starting, and not at all. So yeah, that was the big artistic struggle. Anyway, I'm going to cut this short because this is probably, I don't even know how long this is. But anyhow, so that's kind of wraps up my transition into full-time. And again, I'll be doing some of these more of these long-winded sort of talks answering your questions. So I appreciate all the questions. And again, yeah, thanks you guys for hanging out, and I will see you guys in the next video.